Hello, my name is Duncan Fleming. In this talk, I'm going to be looking at the concept of theurgy as a kind of divine magic. I'm going to avoid using a great deal of technical jargon, and it's worth mentioning from the outset that this talk isn't specifically related to Kabbalah, my main subject of interest, but is instead a wider exploration of the Western esoteric tradition. So let's start by asking, what do we really mean when we talk about magic? In popular culture and mythology, magic is often portrayed as wonder-working, supernatural feats, and all sorts of peculiar and unusual phenomenon. But there's also plenty of definitions of magic out there, and some of these definitions are quite technical. And one fairly well-established approach is to view magic through the lens of the progressive stages of human development. At the very beginning of this process, we might think of humans being in a state of complete connection, of unconscious unity with all that there is, much like an infant's deep connection with their mother. You could think of this as our primal, instinctual bond with nature, where we're not yet separate individuals, but part of a larger collective unconscious. As we grow a bit older, we start to sense and physically engage with the world around us. And this is the stage of infancy and early childhood, where we're like little explorers, learning all about our environment through our own senses and actions. And then, moving on, we enter a phase of massive emotional and imaginative growth. And here we begin to develop and expand our capacity to feel and begin to create vivid imaginary worlds, laying the ground for our future understanding of self and others. Building on that, things get really interesting as we start forming more complex mental structures, but not quite the logical ones that we're used to. These structures are illogical in comparison to adult thinking, and yet they serve as the foundation for our understanding of the world. And as we continue to grow, we begin to adapt more logical frameworks and start to appreciate and understand the complicated structures of human society. This is the stage where we learn about concepts like cause and effect, rules of social behaviour, and how to fit into the world around us. Next, we reach a phase of more abstract thinking and self-reflection. We start questioning our own thoughts and beliefs, developing a more nuanced understanding of ourselves and the world. At this point, we start to weave together and integrate our so-called normal and everyday states of thoughts and feelings with our more hidden, mysterious and subterranean processes. And at that stage, it's like all of the pieces of the puzzle finally come together and we have a clearer purpose of who we are and how we fit into the bigger picture. Eventually, some people may move beyond these personal and more limited states of experience into hitherto unknown psychic phenomena or even transcendental awareness. And this might lead us to a more profound understanding of inner and outer experience, where we realize that there is no longer, nor was there really ever, any true separation between ourselves and the world we inhabit, and that everything arises from one simple and unified being. So, the journey of human development, waking up from the unconscious unity of infancy to a fully aware, all-encompassing, unified experience of existence, is a complicated and fascinating process, shaping who we are and how we perceive the world around us. Now, all this is helpful, but an issue with attributing magic to that developmental model is that sometimes magic is just thought of as an early and primitive stage that we should have left behind us in our evolutionary past. But really, for our purposes, it's actually more helpful to take a more nuanced view and recognize that the magical is something that shows up in different ways throughout the journey, depending on the developmental stage of the person or the society that's doing it, but which is always evident in some form or another, like a golden thread that runs through the whole of human experience. So one way of looking at magic that I find particularly helpful is in the sense of greatness, where magic is something that magnifies, that is magnificent, and which enlarges our consciousness and our worldview exponentially. It's about tapping into a vastly expanded state of awareness and being able to operate dynamically from that place, rather than just experiencing a sense of bewildered amazement or remaining in a passive, embryonic state of wonder. Unlike the modern view of a dead, mechanical universe, practitioners of magic tend to believe in a living, vibrant universe that is teeming with conscious beings. This belief forms the foundation of working with non-physical entities, be they gods and goddesses, spirits, angels, or demons, depending on one's specific tradition. These entities have their own nature, agency, and characteristics, and the ability to work with them is a key theme of theurgy that I will come back to. The names and attributes given to these entities, as well as how they are organized, often mirror the power structures and hierarchies of the specific time and place in which the magical tradition developed. Different cultures have their own pantheons of gods, each with different roles and domains that reflect their society's conventions, morality, laws, and taboos. For instance, if a law-abiding British citizen wanted to address a serious injustice done to them by their neighbour, they probably wouldn't try to seek help directly from the royal family. Instead of bypassing the law, they would find justice more effectively by seeking assistance from a local police officer who represents the authority of the Crown. Similarly, a magician needs to know how to contact and petition the most appropriate entity to handle a specific issue. Alternatively, in the unlikely event that they already have a direct working relationship with the higher authorities, they might hope that their request will be delegated to the right level by those in power. So having looked at what we mean by magic, let's dive deeper into the concept of the divine. When we use this term, we're talking about something that relates to or comes from God, as well as the quality of being divine, such as actually being a deity. Obviously, the word God means different things to different people, and many people reject the concept of God altogether. But we're not talking about concepts here, we're talking about real experience. And so this brings us into the realm of mysticism, which is all about having a direct, unmediated relationship with the divine. It includes experiences of uniting with the divine and a profound sense of connection that goes beyond words and concepts. However, even in these mystical experiences, there's inevitably a degree of mediation happening, whether we realize it or not. Because we're human, we need symbols to understand, record, and convey these transcendental encounters. And the symbols we use are usually drawn from our own culture and traditions, shaping how we perceive and interpret the divine. Now, this interplay between inspiration and religious tradition is crucial. It's what creates and perpetuates religious traditions. But our religious traditions can often end up being culturally conservative, overly deferential, and sometimes become calcified, like stone, stuck in a specific time and place that's long ceased to be relevant to our day-to-day experience in the here and now. To truly inspire, religious traditions require this raw, mystical connection and experience. And yet this rawness can also be very disruptive. So there's a tension here, and also a needing to be very careful that our traditional symbols and spiritual constructs don't inadvertently perpetuate corruption and structural inequality. For instance, we might see this in examples of white supremacist culture where toxic elements like worship of the written word, paternalism, perfectionism, and a belief in the automatic right to comfort are embedded in the very expression of our faith systems, so they end up making things worse instead of better. Theurgy is essentially the application of magical approaches and techniques specifically aimed at uniting with the divine. It's often contrasted with thaumaturgy, which could be thought of as miracle working. Writers often draw a sharp distinction between theurgy and thaumaturgy, categorizing them as high and low magic. Thaumaturgy is sometimes seen as materialistic, superstitious, and even greedy, a desperate resort for lovesick and vindictive farmhands. In contrast, theurgy is often tolerated in polite society, especially where its rites are purely sacramental and devotional. There is a sense of approved causes versus unapproved causes, where asking for personal favours might be seen as crossing the line. In the sanctioned, good form of high ceremonial magic, the very humble magus seeks only to heal and strengthen the bond between God up there and us humans down here, if it be the will of the Creator. It's all about elevating our spiritual connection. On the other hand, in the more taboo or seemingly low magic of thaumaturgy, the evil or at least morally grey sorcerer might ask for boons, make pacts, petition, bribe, cajole, or even threaten spirits into doing their bidding. It's a more transactional approach to magic. But this is a caricature, and of course the lines can blur when someone wants to use magic to bring about tangible improvements in everyday material circumstances down here. Is this disobeying the laws of nature, or is it simply harnessing the forces around us? But there's another modern, subtle and insidious form of this distinction between good and bad magic, which became apparent in the 20th century. Here, only the most rational, highly sanitized, psychologized and stripped down rituals were considered legitimate by contemporary standards. Anything that appeared primitive or grimoiric, as in from the old grammar books of ritual magic, was viewed as grimy, atavistic and to be treated with suspicion. Thaumaturgy can still have its place. It can be good for balancing out our lower aspects, getting our house in order, so to speak. However, it's often seen as secondary in importance to the main work of theurgy, which is about that sacred union with the divine. It's helpful to examine the goal of self-perfection within the realm of divine magic. A prerequisite for any supposed goal of self-perfection is to have some concept or vision of what oneself made perfect might look like. And as you might imagine, this notion is fraught with potential dangers and can quite easily lead to either massive ego inflation or a huge sense of despair and inadequacy, unless of course we have sufficient emotional maturity, psychological insight, and appropriate checks and balances in place to keep our feet on the ground where they belong. It's crucial to recognize, understand, and accept all the various aspects of oneself, even all the hidden and seemingly repellent parts, before seeking any kind of self-improvement. And along the way, we might discover that our true self doesn't really require any improvement except for a stronger commitment to authenticity, to honesty, and to encompassing more elements of what we are into everyday life, even if this seems scary or disruptive. The essence of this journey lies in encountering, deeply knowing, and accepting oneself. It's about restoring unity and fostering a healthy, functional relationship with all that exists. So how does one prepare for this profound work? In our religious and spiritual traditions, preparation often involves a variety of practices such as prayer, fasting, and a rigorous discipline. These acts are not just for the sake of deprivation, but are tools for focusing the mind and spirit. One key aspect of preparation is self-sacrifice. Now, this term might sound daunting, but it's essential to understand its nature within the context of theurgy. Self-sacrifice involves acts of consecration, cutting away, separating, and setting aside certain aspects of oneself. It's about dedicating oneself fully to the work, to the path of divine union. Sacrifice is from the same root as sacred, and it means to cut something away or to set it aside for a special purpose. It does not mean to give something up in its usual context of reluctantly depriving oneself of something which one still desires but is trying ever so hard to be good. To sacrifice something is to willingly release it from one's world so that it can be transformed and liberated into another world. Strike a match, and the pale little stick of wood will wither and blacken as it is liberated into flame. The wood has died, seemingly never to return. The flame appears to have lasted for a moment and then faded away. Like a symbolic knife that we might use in sacrifice to cut away everything that is not our true self, we willingly sacrifice our false attachments and identifications. Why did our ancestors make flesh sacrifices? Was it because they naively thought the gods could be tricked into accepting a scapegoat in lieu of the genuine article? To the landowner or farmer of biblical times, sacrificing a lamb or goat was somebody giving up their valuable property, part of their livelihood. The real secret of sacrifice is that when performed authentically, it doesn't involve any real loss. In fact, it is exchanging good for bad, old for new. A most elegant sacrifice is when we sacrifice a cherished personal possession which reverberates through our imagination, beliefs and emotions and represents something which we used to rely on, but which is now holding us back from further progress. So we liberate it and exchange it willingly. There is no sense of loss, just a sense of relief and letting go. We don't even necessarily expect to receive something tangible in return as a transaction, but we would still know that only good can come of our intention. Any vicious habit or addiction thrives on distorted and exaggerated thinking, and as addicts we often collude in our own addiction. As a typical example, someone might be very addicted to tobacco, having started smoking in their early teens. And as an adult, years after leaving behind other unwanted habits, they might still be trapped in nicotine addiction. And despite being sick to death of smoking and making many earnest attempts to quit, they might find themselves falling back into the habit of smoking again after weeks or months of trying to quit, because the core reason for their relapse is a failure to accept that smoking no longer offers any consolation or reward. They're seeking emotional comfort and self-soothing, but it really doesn't give them any control over bad or uncomfortable feelings. And it's only when they let go of their desire to be soothed and comforted and to control their feelings instead of just letting go and allowing themselves to feel whatever they need to feel, for better or for worse, that they can be free from that addiction. Well, what can this teach us about everyday life? How much flab is there in our lives, in people, places and things that we have attachments to, that we could liberate and give back to creation to reuse? As practitioners embark on these processes of change, their minds during ritual and meditation tend to take on a sense of movement and momentum, and this is often expressed through symbolic representations of a journey. I don't want to appropriate the term vision quest for this process, even though it's a well-recognized phrase, because vision quest is a very specific kind of rite of passage linked to some Native American cultures. But why would there be this theme of journey, adventure and travel in the tradition? It's because fundamentally we are animals, meaning we are animated beings capable of physical movement to manipulate our environment, and we need to move around in order to seek out and obtain what we need to survive and grow and thrive. And so the tradition often uses the theme of movement and travel to express our inner process of spiritual growth and transformation. This might be through a vision of the ascent of a holy mountain, symbolizing the elevation of the soul, or it could be depicted as climbing a heavenly ladder, representing the steps towards divine realization. Some aspects of the tradition speak of travelling in a chariot, symbolising a journey through the celestial spheres. Other schools describe moving through sacred palaces, each room representing a deeper level of spiritual understanding. To really understand theurgy, it's necessary to explore the concepts of sympathy and the doctrine of signatures within the realm of divine magic. Before I get there, firstly, I want to touch on the concept of the Eucharist, which comes from the Greek word meaning thanksgiving or gratitude. This is often associated with the Christian belief in transubstantiation, where the bread or wafer and the wine of Holy Communion become the actual body and blood of Christ. However, there are various versions of this ritual within magical and occult tradition. In this context, at its most simple, the process could be seen as putting God into a biscuit and then eating the biscuit so that one becomes the God. Now, at first glance, this might seem like ridiculous superstition or perhaps just a form of self-hypnosis. Even in our seemingly rational and modern mindsets, echoes of older dualistic traditions persist. These echoes are not limited to spiritual concepts, but also manifest in the mind-body split and the separation between the inner and outer worlds in our everyday lives. In spiritual traditions, the Creator God is often depicted as being like a potter moulding the lifeless clay of the universe, creating a sharp division between dead, inert matter, seen as evil and dirty, and the living spirit viewed as good and clean. This raises profound questions. Is the physical universe divine, or is it considered lesser and corrupt? Are we to imagine a creator God endlessly toying with our own filth in empty space for eternity? Personally, I find resonance with the concept of the world as God's body. In this perspective, everything is inherently divine. Every part of us, every aspect of the world is a manifestation of the divine, and there is no part of us which is not divine. This idea is sometimes depicted in ancient stories where the world and humans are described as made out of the dismembered body parts of ancestral gods. And our bodies are indeed made from the remnants of long dead stars. So, having come this far, let's consider the act of consecrating a visible, physical object with a conscious recognition that it really is an aspect of the divine manifesting in the physical world. Not just a symbolic representation or a substitute, but the real deal. When we consciously and knowingly perform this act with full awareness of what we are doing, then we can truly partake of the object and we can recognize our unity with the divine. But what makes an object appropriate for this act? Can we use any old object for this purpose? Well, we're always dealing with aspects of the divine, not the entirety of everything that there is. And so different objects have their own particular qualities, resonances, or signatures. This concept is tied to the ancient notion of sympathy, where everything in the universe is organized hierarchically, guided and controlled by something greater in a vast cosmic chain of being. For example, we might consider the connections between honey and the sun. They both share certain special qualities which are also connected with the precious metal gold. All three share a radiant yellow color. Similarly, in their own way, each embodies a quality of timelessness and eternity. Honey preserves. The sun appears to self-resurrect and rebirth each day, and gold remains untarnished. If we delve further, we might connect all three with the sphere of Tiferet on the Kabbalistic tree of life. Tiferet stands at the center, symbolizing beauty, harmony, and balance. It is often linked to the concept of the sun, represented by solar imagery. Honey and gold, symbols of richness, sweetness, and purity, reflect the qualities of Tiferet, blending harmoniously at the center of everything. Sometimes the correspondences are very neat and tidy. The hexagonal shape of a honeycomb fits perfectly with the number 6, which is also traditionally associated with Tiferet as the 6th Sephirah on the Tree of Life. However, not all traditional correspondences in the Western esoteric tradition are as cogent as this. Some are merely superficial or based on folklore. For example, sliced mushrooms might be associated with the human ear, or pomegranate seeds might be associated with the jaws and teeth, simply because of their appearance. Some magical correspondences are based on myths and legends, and some are based on the mistaken beliefs of ancient natural philosophy, while the origin of many others has been completely lost to history. It's essential to discern for oneself whether these connections hold meaning and resonance rather than using them superficially or superstitiously in rituals. Theurgy thrive within the framework of Neoplatonic philosophy, which is the name given to a mystical and metaphysical system that flourished primarily during the 3rd to 6th centuries. Neoplatonic philosophy emphasized the ascent of the soul towards the divine through contemplation and the belief in a hierarchical spiritual reality. The Timaeus by Plato, written around 360 BCE, is a foundational work in the development of Neoplatonic philosophy, especially due to its cosmological ideas. Whilst they were considered pagan polytheists, Neoplatonic philosophers also recognized a form of monism, the idea that the one is transcendent while the many are aspects of this one. They developed complex theories of emanation, which we won't delve deeply into here. One Neoplatonic philosopher who systematically espoused these ideas was Iamblichus, a Syrian man of Arabic origin who lived from the 3rd to 4th century. He was a student of Porphyry, who in turn studied under Plotinus. For Iamblichus, theurgy was about imitation of the gods, following in their footsteps. He argued that the transcendental cannot be fully grasped by the mind, and so instead he advocated the use of magical religious rites that would sanctify and raise up the divine signatures in objects and actions. Ultimately, our role in this vast cosmic system was not merely to unite with God, but to ascend towards our true purpose of participating in the cosmic order. Now let's venture briefly into the realm of divination, the practice of seeking guidance or insights from the unseen through various methods. In modern times, we see many forms of divination like tarot cards, astrology, palm reading, the I Ching, and so on. These practices can be dismissed as mere superstition, while others approach them intuitively, looking for signs and symbols and a deeper meaning within the world around them. But why do we engage in divination? Remember, in the theurgic model, we are experiencing the world as God's body. So divination can be seen as reading the book of the world, the book of life. It's about creating a microcosm, a smaller version of everything in the universe, whether that is created from sticks and stones or charts or traditionally the entrails of sacrificed animals, and then posing a question to imprint upon it. At its best, divination is about directly relating and conversing with the divine. It's not about superstition or fatalism, but about seeking guidance and insights from the cosmic web of existence. In the context of theurgy, ritual magic refers to a set of practices and techniques aimed at invoking or evoking spiritual forces or entities to achieve certain goals, such as spiritual enlightenment, communion with divine beings, or personal transformation. Ritual magic in theurgy often involves a structured set of actions, words, and gestures that are believed to have a symbolic or metaphysical connection to the desired outcome. Ritual may involve the use of sacred texts, prayers, invocations, offerings, gestures, symbols, and ceremonial tools. The purpose of these rituals is to create a sacred space, raise spiritual energy, and establish a connection between the practitioners and the divine realm. And whether one is operating alone or as part of a working group, a magical ritual should always be carried out with absolute sincerity and a crystal clear, worthwhile intention. While ritual magic can sometimes induce altered states and evoke awe through its otherworldly nature, which may in the short term boost someone's confidence and give them a sense of purpose, its primary goal is not simply to escape ordinary experiences or bypass rational thinking like running a simulation program to adopt a primitive technological perspective. It's more than just a form of fantasy roleplay. And while a practitioner might desire sophisticated ritual magic tools such as an ornate wand or an elaborate spell book decorated with occult symbols, creating and consecrating your own simple working tools can be more meaningful. Crafting your own items allows them to become personal symbols of your relationship with the divine, reflecting the principle of correspondence and the doctrine of signatures. Homemade and individually dedicated tools embody your evolving inner awareness and your connection to spiritual principles. At the heart of ritual magic is the act of communion with the presence of aspects of the divine. This involves creating a sacred space, a container for the energies and entities you wish to work with. This sacred space includes all of the core ingredients of reality, such as the four directions, the elements, and the collective potencies that make up the universe. Let's briefly consider one or two of the typical ingredients of ritual magic, as well as ritual working tools that might work together to create this sacred space. Perfumes. These are not just about pleasant scents, but they hold symbolic and energetic significance. Certain aromatic gums, resins, oils, and so on are associated with aspects of the divine. They can be used to purify the space, evoke certain energies, and enhance the focus of a ritual. Additionally, our sense of smell can evoke deep memories which bring us back to a particular state the more we work with the same fragrances for a particular type of working. Colours. Each colour carries its own vibration and meaning. For example, Briatic colours in the Kabbalistic tradition are associated with specific aspects of the divine. Now, let's talk about the value and cost of theurgy, of diving deep into this kind of divine magic. Not for all by any means, but for many practitioners, theurgy becomes the primary work, the central focus of their magical path. Everything else becomes ancillary, supporting and enhancing this main work of divine union and communion. But what is the cost of magic? It's not just about buying fancy tools or elaborate robes. The true cost is your time and space. Who amongst us has unlimited time and space to dedicate to these practices? As we explore the realms of divination and ritual magic, we should remain aware of the sacredness of our practices, the depth of our intentions, and the transformative power within them. In ancient times, sailors relied on the steady guidance of the North Star when they were navigating the vast open seas. Through dark nights and stormy weather, they followed its constant light, trusting it to lead them to their destination. They didn't aim to reach the star itself, but they used the light for a sense of direction as a guiding beacon. In a similar way, we might seek the distant, radiant light of Keter, the highest point on the tree of life. And along the way, we might have experiences where we become fleetingly at first and then more steadily aware of the vastness of being and our essential unity with that vastness. But we should also accept that as humans, we cannot continually or completely bask in that light. And so, like those ancient mariners, we aim towards that star of perfection, not to attain it in this lifetime, but to use its celestial wisdom to guide us. It reminds us of our ongoing quest for spiritual enlightenment, steering us through life's challenges towards the shores of divine union.